Hi, Ketchikan. Welcome to another episode of Healthy Minds. In collaboration with the Ketchikan Wellness Coalition, my name is Brittany Pope, and I'm a licensed professional counselor here to talk to you about foraging in the Southeast Alaskan rainforest. My guest here is a hobby forager, and so I want to have him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jacob Solken.
And so Jake, I asked Jake to be on here today because tell us a little bit about how you got into foraging and what foraging is.
So I kind of got my start in Ohio before we moved, and I just kind of got into foraging and looking for wild edibles, including berries and mushrooms and things you can just go out into the forest and find and bring home and eat.
So was your goal to make your grocery bill cheaper or make yourself feel better? Like, what was your goal for foraging?
I guess my goal really was just to have just some natural and wild food that was available to everyone, that anyone that can go out and get these things. It's out there if you know what to look for. And I've always had an interest in biology and just the natural world. So yeah, and I guess to just eat healthier was one of my main goals, and it brings me some I guess positive energy and mental health when I know where my food is coming from.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned an interesting topic of that's what our show is primarily about is mental health. And so what we eat to fuel our bodies affects our bodies mentally, physically, emotionally. And so I think that tying in foraging today to mental health is such a key component of really keeping ourselves healthy, which will keep our minds healthy. So we also have two fun guests. I'm not sure you can see the one on the floor, but this is Bentley the dog and June, who's showing you guys how to relax. So I want to talk about a little bit more about your background. So what got you to Ketchikan?
Really, Ketchikan was, it wasn't really on the front burner at first. We didn't really know much about it, but Brittany and I just kind of randomly found a job up here, and then we decided that, let's do it. Let's go into the unknown. It was certainly unknown. We didn't know much about the place and didn't know anyone here. But we were looking for some change and adventure in our lives, and we decided to go for it. We got the opportunity and we took it.
And so when you got here, what was the first thing that you did?
The first thing I did?
Yeah.
I had an entire month off, so it was around the end of December, so, it was kind of that transition. It was quite cold and sometimes rainy, but I just immediately got out and started doing lots of hiking with the dogs. Was doing a little bit of fishing. And within a few months, we acquired a boat, and we were out doing the whole Southeast Alaska boating experience with crabbing and shrimping there in the early spring.
So you mentioned a couple different ways to find food in Southeast Alaska.
There's lots.
Water and land. So on the water, what are some of our primary food sources? It sounds like are salmon.
Certainly.
What are some other things that you have caught and sort of been able to provide for yourself and your family?
Well, I think most of us are familiar with the catches here in Southeast. We have halibut and salmon and rockfish, lingcod. You also have crab and shrimp. And all these things are pretty accessible to us. We live on the water, and anyone that has a boat can pretty much go out and catch their own dinner and their own food and actually store some of it and provide themselves with quite a sustainable catch.
And so when we talk about all of these different foods, whether it's land or water, for fish and salmon, that's high in protein. And protein is good to help build muscle, to help build strength, to help your brain cells. Have you noticed when eating, knowing where your food is coming from, knowing the source, has that provided you more comfort? Has that provided you, do you feel like your wellness has overall improved?
I think certainly it is. Just knowing where my food is coming from and the availability for me to personally go out and use my own bare hands to go process my own food is certainly unique. When you go to a store, when I was in Ohio, you kind of never really know exactly where your food is coming from. There is some labeling that can kind of be misleading sometimes. So when you're actually harvesting it yourself, it gives you for me, it gives, I have that mental mindset that I know where it came from, and it's healthy and clean food.
So now we were talking about fishing, so let's go to foraging.
Sure.
Kind of got us off on a path, but it is exciting to have the land and the water to be able to know where our food sources come from, which is a really unique part about Southeast Alaska, especially Ketchikan. So in the forest, what kind of mushrooms are you finding?
I primarily forage for golden chanterelle mushrooms, which grow in the fall time. They can be found in a variety of areas, and they grow pretty large in some cases, and they're pretty easy to identify, and it's one of the mushrooms I started finding in Ohio as well. They grow all over the whole planet as long as you're looking in the right conditions and obviously the right type of habitat for them.
What kind of things do you do with the golden chanterelle mushrooms?
Oh,
That would be easy for our viewers to try at home.
Oh, sure. I mean, the easiest way is just to throw them in a skillet with some onions and butter, and just a little stir fry. Put them over some rice. You can make them into like a sauce and put them over steak or fish.
What's your favorite thing to do with? You like to fry them. You batter and fry them.
Yeah, sometimes you can. Everyone likes I don't know if everyone, but a lot of people like a fried mushroom. So you can make a batter and batter them up just like you would a halibut.
Can you share your secret batter with us on live television?
I could. I haven't.
Well, what's a simple batter that if someone were watching this that they could
Sure.
make at home?
The easiest way is just to roll the mushroom in some flour, and then dip it in like an egg and milk little mixture, and then back into like a breadcrumb, and then straight into a frying pan with some olive oil. It's usually the best way.
Okay, so he's given us some of his secret.
Of course, you experiment with some seasonings. I don't always do the same. It's almost always different.
And it sounds like you can almost it's like eating like fried food, but a little bit healthier for you.
I think I like to tell myself that.
So one thing that's really cool, and I remember back last year when Ketchikan Wellness Coalition came out with their vitamin D campaign, and I had given Jake one of those to hang up at his employer, and he had pointed out, oh my goodness, I forage for mushrooms, and they're also a great source of vitamin D.
Yeah, so when I looked at the poster, I saw on there that mushrooms were on there, and not just any mushrooms, but wild mushrooms especially are high in vitamin D, so that was exciting for me. As one of the foods I eat, especially during the fall, we're going into that time of year where we're having less and less sunlight. So ironically, these mushrooms start growing at that time, and lo and behold, they're high in vitamin D. So if you can't get, your source of vitamin D from the sun, you can go out here especially and pick a bounty of these mushrooms if you know where to look, and bring them home and eat them. So I've been eating mushrooms since about August.
Just to build up that vitamin D for the winter.
I think it helps.
So the other, I think, good question is, I know there's secret spot for mushrooms, but where are some general areas that are good to find mushrooms within Ketchikan?
Well, as every good mushroom hunter goes, I can't tell you my spots because, every year they will come back usually in those same areas. So once you've found a location, it's really nice because you can know that next year or in the fall time, I can go right to that spot and find them. But generally, these mushrooms like a fairly well-drained area. They like to grow around spruce, Sitka spruce. They like the spruce forest. They like usually like some slope, like a slope. They don't like an area that's like a muskeg or anything like that. So you want to look in a well-drained area, usually hillsides and things like that.
So he's not going to tell us his specific spots, unfortunately, but it sounds like there are areas that are well drained on a hillside near Sitka spruces. That seems like most of the island.
Yeah, you're going to run into a lot of different. You want to find you typically more of an older growth forest. They are going to be easier to find for one, just because it's more open and you can kind of see. They're very easy to spot. They're a big yellow mushroom, so it's not hard to find them. And there's only a few other ones that are similar in shape and color, and they're very easily, you can distinguish between the two or the other ones.
So what about this? So it looks like you have a whole
this is my
mushroom
kit.
purse here.
Well, it's a basket.
So can we go through what's in your basket?
Certainly.
So it looks like...
So you definitely want to have some kind of reference, either pictures or a field guide, which I have here. Especially when you're first starting out, you definitely want to study the characteristics of a mushroom.
Okay.
There are definitely some defining things with the chanterelles that we find here.
So we go to chanterelle, and it will be in here?
No, this is arranged by color and
Interesting.
yeah, every field guide's a little different.
Okay. Do you recommend this field guide?
Sure, it's a pretty good one. It's a wide-ranging guide of Alaska's mushrooms, and of course, at the library there's other sources you can find.
Is this from the library?
That's not. I actually own that one.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a gift.
And so what else? So what's going on here?
Okay, so I carry these with me. This is my knife that I use. Any kind of knife will do, but we don't want to pull the mushrooms up. You want to cut them at their base. You don't want to disturb the mycelium, which grows in the ground. It's part of the mushroom. And then I usually clean them while I'm out there in the woods. So I brush the leaves and dirt as much as I can possibly off of them before I put them in my basket.
Are these two cleaning tools?
These are just two cleaning tools here.
So this is just a simple paintbrush
It's just
that
a
you can get from
paintbrush,
Tongass, or you can
And it
get
actually
from
works the
Madison's?
best. This is actually a mushroom brush, and I find that the paintbrush works better.
So is this a specific kind of paintbrush, or it's just a 1-inch?
Nope, just a simple paintbrush.
Okay.
You don't want something too stiff because you could, damage and bruise the mushroom, but just enough to get debris and things off of them because sometimes they can get pretty dirty.
And then a multi-tool?
Yep, that's just, I'm not sure why that's in there.
But good to bring with you.
An extra knife, yeah.
And then...
That's for fishing. That's not.
All
That's
right.
just...
Clearly this is the catch-all basket.
So you want to use some kind of basket when you're foraging for mushrooms, especially because this is going to allow the spores of the mushrooms to fall out of your basket. So as you walk around, your mushrooms will sit in here and spores will come out, and you'll basically be spreading those mushrooms throughout the forest as you walk around, which is good. We want more mushrooms to grow.
So it sounds like you're not only mushroom hunting, but you're replanting.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, in a
Mushrooms.
way, yeah, you're kind of spreading their spores throughout the forest.
Interesting.
Whereas if you would wrap them in a plastic bag or something, you would contain all that in there and you wouldn't be helping the mushrooms spread.
So when you go out mushroom hunting, what do you make sure to have besides these mushroom tools? What are some other things for beginners who are watching this, for our viewers?
Well, you want to have good rain gear and stuff because you're usually going to be out. A lot of times you're going to be off the trail, so that's one thing about mushroom hunting that I really enjoy is it takes you to places that you might not normally go. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to explore new areas. You obviously want to be careful not to get lost because it's easy to do here. So have a good sense of direction. If you're going really far out off the trail or something, maybe a GPS or something to find your way.
So
Obviously, you want to carry like a bear spray and your safety protection there.
And just to add on to that GPS, at the library, the Ketchikan Volunteer Rescue Squad has the spot beacons that you can check out, and that could be another way to keep yourself safe, especially in this winter weather. So I think that's definitely something to mention and important, and also letting people know where you are when you are foraging.
Yeah, it's always good to let people know where you're at and, hey, I'm going to be off the trail at whatever spot I might be, because mushroom hunting is going to probably take you off the trail. And a lot of times you might end up following like a game trail or something. So there's a good chance you're going to possibly run into some wildlife or a bear or something, which I have before.
And when you run into wildlife or a bear, do you have bear spray?
Yeah, I typically carry bear spray with me at the least.
Okay.
I have the dogs with me too. They're sometimes a good deterrent, sometimes the opposite of that. So, but yeah, in the one encounter that we had, the dogs actually ended up scaring the bear before I knew it was there. So they were aware of the bear before I was.
Okay, so dogs can be good.
They can be good, and they can also bring the bear to you. So,
it depends
goes
on the
both
bear.
ways.
Yeah, it depends on the bear.
Situation for sure.
So not only are you foraging, so are there any other mushrooms that you can be found in Southeast that are edible?
Certainly there are. There's a variety of edible species. I primarily target the golden chanterelles just because of their quality is they're like top notch. They go for quite a lot of money actually. They only grow wild, so they're not cultivated, which is very unique. So they're a wild mushroom. They are only found in certain areas. And yeah, they're fall time only. So.
So you
Most of the other ones I'm not too familiar with. There's chicken of the woods, which is a pretty easily identifiable mushroom you can find here as well.
And why is it called chicken of the woods?
Because it actually tastes like chicken.
And that's, I think, too, where you got your breading idea for the mushrooms, was you originally would bread the chicken of the woods.
Yeah, the chicken of the woods, in Ohio, I was finding a lot more of those, and they're very easy to see. They're big orange and yellow mushrooms that grow on the side of trees or stumps. And yeah, you slice them up, and if you get them when they're in good condition, you can bread them up, and they taste like chicken nuggets, really. It's quite interesting.
I have tasted one of these, and they taste like chicken nuggets, but better.
Yeah.
And they're healthier for you.
I would think so.
So it sounds like we've talked all about mushrooms. I think we should see what they look like. So show us what your golden chanterelles look like.
Yeah, certainly.
And then also tell us what the fake golden chanterelles.
Yeah, the lookalikes.
The lookalikes. What not to eat.
What not to eat,
In
indeed.
regards to the golden chanterelles. Obviously, anything else we would tell you to consult with an expert in foraging wild mushrooms, or also consult with your doctor, just to make sure that everything's safe and you can have what you're finding in the forest. So let's look at those.
All right, let's do it. All right, guys, welcome to my kitchen. I'm gonna show you some of my golden chanterelles that I found this year, and then also some of what not to pick. So, down here we have a variety of some of my golden chanterelles. You know, they come in different sizes and different shapes. Here's one cut in half. I kind of feel like they grow like a flower. They kind of look like a flower to me out in the woods. And one of their main defining characteristics is they have what we call false veins. False gills. So they actually have veins and not gills underneath. So your typical mushroom, most of the ones you're probably familiar with that you see in the store, have gills underneath, which are the little flaps. And that's apparent on these mushrooms here that I just found out in the yard. These, I believe, are jack-o'-lantern mushrooms, which can be a look-alike, and they have the gills underneath, which are these little flaps that they're actually separate from the main mushroom itself. So these, if you would split this open, you can see that these are separate pieces. They're actually little flaps underneath. Where your golden chanterelle, let me find a really good example, it doesn't have little flaps under here. It has veins. So it almost looks like someone took a fork and just scraped across the mushroom. So that's very different from what we would see here as the gills. These are gills with the flaps, and then chanterelles have veins. That's one of the main ways to tell that you're actually finding a golden chanterelle. Another way is your golden chanterelles will grow usually singular. So like you'll have one mushroom. Occasionally you'll have one like this, where there's like two attached to one stalk, like this one here, but usually no more than two. So typically they're individuals. So they grow, you'll find one here and then another one here. So that's one of the main ways to tell, where lookalikes sometimes grow all together in big clumps and on top of themselves. Now, why these might grow pretty close, each one will have a different stalk. Their color is very kind of goldish yellow, where you have this mushroom is more of a brown. This is your jack-o'-lantern. Sometimes the color can vary on golds to where it's more of a white. And of course, these have been dried out for several weeks, the ones I have, so they've lost a bit of their gold color, but when they're out in the woods, you'll find that they're much more yellow and gold. And another way to tell a golden chanterelle is when you cut the stalk, it'll be solid, it won't be hollow. So if you see here, this is solid, where these ones I got out of the yard have more of a hollow stem. Your chanterelles will always be white. Their stalk will be white in the center. And some people describe it as like string cheese almost. So like you can peel some of this back and it's like a string cheese. That's one way to identify these guys. And then yeah, I like to, once I take them out of the forest, you know, a lot of times they're gonna be really wet. They need to dry out. So some people use dehydrators to do that. I usually clean them real well and then kind of lay them out on like just some racks so they can kind of dry for like a day or an afternoon just to get the initial moisture off of them. You know, typically you don't want to take them straight and start like rinsing them or soaking them in any water. That's just gonna cause them to pull more moisture. And they'll keep a lot better and cook a lot better once they've dried for a few days or even a week. So that's one of the main reasons why I clean them while I'm out in the forest usually. Now some of them you'll get, well, you know, it rains here quite heavy sometimes, so the dirt will hit the ground and splash back up onto the mushrooms. So you're gonna want to, some of them you might have to rinse off and actually get wet. And if you have a mushroom that's wet and you want it to dry better, sometimes cutting them up and slicing them and then laying them out can help. A good way to keep them is in just a paper bag. And then this will, once they're dry, you want to put them in here or drier and, you know, close them up, put them in your refrigerator. And they can keep for several weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, almost up to a month. You want to occasionally, every few days or 3-4 days, go into your bag, dump them all out, check them out because some of them might not be keeping as well. So you want to get rid of those ones. And what happens there is you'll notice just some browning on there. It's just browning just a bit. That's okay, but when it's still wet, you want to just cut that off of the mushroom and just get rid of it, and then you can put it back in your bag. But if you let that go for too long, it can spoil your harvest for sure. So just checking them periodically is always a good thing to do when you're trying to keep them. And you can see some of these I cut in, they were quite wet. You know, I cut them into quarters and stuff like that to help them dry out. Yeah, these are really dry. These have been drying for several weeks, some of these, so which is really prime that way. You know, if you can cook them fresh right away, but they're gonna shrink up a lot in your pan because of all the water that they're holding. So once you've dried them for a week or so, like that's prime time. So yeah, all right. So I always like to season up my pan with a little olive oil, a little butter. Get that going in there. And then my favorite way to do this is just with a little bit of onions. You can kind of get those onions going for a little bit first, and then just taking your mushrooms here and on top. And then you kind of pick whatever kind of seasoning you like, but I usually go with a little garlic salt and just pepper, and that's it. So we'll throw a little bit of that in there. And then starting these guys out on kind of a lower or medium temperature, and then just gradually increasing your heat as you go along. And then, you know, I might have to add some olive oil or butter as you cook them. And yeah, so I've been doing this with, at the end, I'll just cook up a couple eggs, and that's been my breakfast here for you know, probably 3 days out of the week or so, I'll eat mushrooms. Sometimes there's like, if the mushrooms are a little wetter, they'll release like, you'll see moisture come out in the beginning. And then after that, you gotta be careful because they start to kind of shrivel up at that point. So yeah, when you're getting to that and you see the moisture kind of come off, you either wanna maybe add a little bit more olive oil or some butter so they don't start to stick, and they are gonna shrink up pretty quick. But you can cook them for, you know, good probably like 5 or 10 minutes and kind of flip them around depending on your heat. You know, this cast iron's taking a little bit to heat up here, so it'll kind of turn a little bit of a golden, you know, color or kind of get dark on either side. So, but yeah, it's about 10 minutes usually, about 5 minutes on each side. Yeah, I've been munching on these mushrooms since like August.
Nice. It's a good harvest. They're pretty much gone now, aren't they?
Yeah, you could still find some like in the moss, like this time of year. They're not really like, oh, there's one, you know what I mean? Like they're kind of more, they'll grow in like in the moss and underneath stumps and things like that. You can still find them. But once it's, really they're good until like you start getting the freezes overnight, and then like you'll still find them, but like you'll bring them home and they'll like turn brown because they've been froze, you know? They don't want to freeze them, so. Yeah, it's a seasonal thing, you know, so that's, you know, so it's kind of cool. It's like, you know, you only get them, maybe that adds to like the excitement for me, you know, it's like fall time's coming, yes. It's like, you know, you're gonna like winter time's coming too, so it's a little bit like, oh no, winter's here. But it gives me something to look forward to, for sure. Yeah. Start to flip some of these guys. Yeah, these, as a mushroom goes, like even people that don't particularly like the like mushroomy flavor, you know, or texture, out of all the mushrooms I've had, these have the least shroomy taste. They taste more like they have more of a meaty kind of taste to them, you know.
What kind of texture are you going for here? A little crispy or just?
I don't like to get them. I want them to be still like a mushroom, you know, so I don't want them, you can crisp them up as much as you'd like, but I like them to be just slightly chewy, I guess, like a mushroom should be.
I wonder how much of people not liking mushrooms because of poor preparation, because I didn't know you're supposed to dry mushrooms.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. Like if these would have been wet, they would have shrunk up probably even more. And these didn't really like let off a lot of moisture. Like sometimes when they have a lot of moisture in them, you'll see like the pan will just be like water, and then they'll start to stick a little. But yeah, the sound it was making, like that's dried. That's really dry. So yeah, what's nice about these golden chanterelles is, like I was talking, it's like you find a patch and you pretty much know next year you're gonna go right to that same spot and find them again. So that's why a lot of mushroom hunters won't tell you where they go, because it's like, you know, you give up your spot and then not everyone, but people start to find out about it. And that's kind of half the battle, is finding those locations. So a lot of times you'll just be kind of wandering, get off the trail and just like, you think you're in a good area, maybe around like, you know, the little ravines and stuff. They like to grow around water and things, like flowing water. And you just get off and wander around. Sometimes you bust. Like I didn't find any in that area, you know. And maybe you were just like a week too early, you know, because certain areas they'll pop up at different times. But a lot of times, if you find a good area, like you'll go back there like multiple times to the same spot in a season. And they might not be in the exact same area, like, oh, they're growing over here now, but they're within that vicinity. Like the mycelium's at work, it's down there doing its thing. So, so these are done. Yeah, so I wouldn't cook them much more than that. They'll just start to get kind of dry and crispy, you know. So you want them to be kind of soft still, but fairly well cooked. So where they're just kind of getting a little black around the edges, kind of goldish. Yeah, so this like, you could like do this and mix it all up and put it over some rice. Like that's really good. It's a good way to eat these guys. Yeah, it's pretty hot. There you go, it's breakfast right there.
Let's do a little bit of a shift. So foraging from mushrooms to also foraging berries.
Certainly.
So what kind of berries have you found in what times of year?
So as a lot of people probably know, there's an incredible amount of berries that grow here. We have salmon berries, blueberries, huckleberries. Yeah, so there's...
We have those watermelon berries. Remember
Just
those little ones we found at Deer Mountain?
Yeah, what else do we have?
Or Dude Mountain.
There's cloudberries that grow in the muskeg. So you have just an incredible long span of a growing season for these berries. And yeah, they come at different times. I find the salmon berries are kind of first, and then you kind of start running into the blueberries later on and the huckleberries throughout the summer. And I also find that, in different areas, they grow at different times as well. So earlier in the year, look for those like sunny spots that are getting a lot of sun early on, kind of lower down. And I find they grow even later, like up higher on the mountain. So yeah, you might be finding salmon berries here like around town early on, and then go up on Dude Mountain in, late summer, and they'll still be up there. So
sort of their season is spring to summer?
yeah, spring all the way into the fall. I mean, you can still find huckleberries into the fall time.
And so do you do more berry hunting or do you do more mushroom hunting?
Well, I do probably an equal amount of both. I did a lot more berry hunting this year than I have in the past few years. I was just getting frustrated with going to the grocery store and buying fresh fruit and bringing it home, and within 2 or 3 days it was already growing mold in my refrigerator. So that's kind of frustrating when you're already paying a pretty high price for your produce. So I just told myself, hey, like I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna take the time, and it does take some time, and I'm gonna forage and I'm gonna go pick some berries. And you take an hour or two each day or a couple days a week, and you go out and there's just an incredible amount of berries you can find. And then I just freeze most of mine to keep them, and so far they've kept really well in just gallon-sized freezer bags.
So it sounds like you brought up a couple good points. One, knowing where our food comes from brings us peace of mind, and also, again, eating a good variety of food helps with our physical and mental health and emotional health, but also saving us money.
Yeah, I think it definitely can help with your grocery bill for sure. I mean, you're taking some of your time out of the day, but at the same time, after you've put in the work, it becomes that much more valuable to yourself, and yeah, it can definitely save you some money.
So, and if you save money, then you could spend that money on other things, maybe like self-care.
Yeah, exactly.
And this might be a form of self-care for people, is foraging. Is this a form of self-care for you?
I think it's definitely a form of self-care. I feel, for one, just knowing where my food is coming from, and just the availability of the wild edibles here in Southeast Alaska is just, it's pretty incredible. And I didn't take full advantage of it probably the first summer or two I was here. And I was kind of kicking myself later. I'm like, looking at how bountiful it is here with the blueberries and salmon berries and things that grow here.
Yeah.
That it gives me a peace of mind that I can go out and take advantage of the natural food that is available to us here.
So nature is a really huge thing in, I think, just in our mental health and physical health, just giving ourselves that time to connect to nature. And so it sounds like you're not only giving yourself time to connect to nature, but you're also saving money in the meantime, and connecting with, food that you're...
I mean, what better way to connect with nature than to actually go out in nature, collect your own food, and then, eat it and share it with your friends.
Do you find that you're multitasking, or do you feel like you're able to focus on finding the mushrooms and not focus on like all this stuff you've got going on?
Well, it's nice because I'm not really multitasking. I have one focus when I go out, and it's, I'm going to find mushrooms, and that takes, it takes some time, and it definitely, it takes a lot of my energy, and it focuses it into just going out and foraging. So I kind of forget about maybe some stressors that I have going on, or, what's going on at work or in my personal life, and I can just be alone in the woods, and or take a friend. It's always fun to bring friends along, and you really connect in a way that's it's unique, because for that time I'm very driven and focused on the task at hand.
I think you just brought up a really good point that I talk to a lot of my clients about is intention setting. And so it's having a purpose for whatever activity that you're doing, but making sure you're being mindful while doing it. And so intention setting is a really good way to be mindful in the moment. So it sounds like you're setting an intention of, I'm going to do...
Yeah, I mean, you're completely in the moment. You're going out and you're trying to find a source of food. And it's fun while you do it. But there's something special there when you actually, you stumble upon a beautiful patch of mushrooms that are just ripe or whatever and perfect for the picking. And it's kind of a bit of a special moment. You get to connect with the forest and, bring those things home and share them with your friends and family.
And so intention setting for our viewers out there is really deciding the purpose of what you're doing. And so for Jake, it sounds like this purpose for me is to connect to the forest, to connect to nature. Mm-hmm. And so when you're out there, do you remind yourself, if you feel your mind start to wander, do you remind yourself, this is my purpose, this is my intention? Or are you finding that now it's such a habit because you...
I am focused on just going out and getting mushrooms or whatever I'm foraging for, whether it's berries, and I'm really not thinking about much else for maybe an hour or maybe 2 hours, depending on how long I'm out. I find that my mind is centered around what I'm doing.
And so that's a really good, just to hear for our viewers that you've been this has been a practice for you for the last 4 or 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, going on like 5-6 years now. Yeah.
So it's ingrained in you to be present and be mindful in this moment. And so that just goes to show, if you practice mindfulness in your daily life, that it just starts to become second nature, and you don't really have to think about it, and you're still present in the moment, and you're not stressing about X, Y, and Z that you have to do.
Yeah,
the
certainly.
next day.
And it's something, I look forward to all year. I mean, I'm thinking about mushroom season and berry picking throughout the winter, just like, how awesome it's going to be next year to go out and do that.
He's not lying, guys. And something we failed to mention, Jake is actually my husband. So I actually get the benefit of eating all these beautiful golden chanterelles and salmon berries and huckleberries and blueberries. I think it's fun when we go out with the dogs and go berry picking, and they're also berry picking too.
Yeah, so we've actually, we got the dogs. Bentley here will actually stand up and pick some of the berries off the bushes sometimes. So
they're good helpers, except
yeah.
they eat them. They don't bring them back for us.
Yeah, they like to eat them too.
So it can be also depending on the berry, because obviously some berries are poisonous for animals. But depending on the berry and making sure you're talking to your vet.
Yeah, another thing is, when you're out foraging, make sure that you kind of have an idea of what you're looking for.
Which is where
use a visual guide, and just don't go pick any berry or mushroom in the forest, because some can be quite dangerous.
Right, this little handy guy comes into play when you're looking at different kinds of mushrooms.
And if you're unsure of something, always take pictures of what the berry bush or mushroom is. Consult like a local mushroom guide or your local expert on foraging. If you have a friend or someone who has picked before, they can usually help you out. And before you eat anything, you always want, especially mushrooms and berries, you want to check just with someone that has maybe more knowledge than you, and make sure that you're getting the right thing.
So is there any mushroom groups around town? Any mushroom hangouts?
I don't really know of any. However, I know there are some Facebook pages that are available, like mushroom identification page and things like that, where wild edibles. Just check out some of that stuff on Facebook, and they're large groups, and you can post your pictures, and people can identify that mushroom or berry for you. And that way you can kind of get, I think a lot of people stray away from wild foods because they're afraid they might eat the wrong mushroom, or they're not sure what they're out there picking. You know, they're like, oh, it's just not worth the risk. You know, but once you get comfortable with it, it becomes a really nice hobby.
Can you eat any of these raw? So the mushrooms, can you eat those
No,
raw?
you want to cook.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to cook everything. Not the berries. You can eat the berries raw. Usually, just clean those and look for any. You know, sometimes you're going to bring insects and things home in your berries, so you want to give them a good wash. Using ice water can kill any of the critters you might bring home with you.
Okay.
And of course, like freezing them, that's probably the best way. But you know, a lot of people make jam and pies and all kinds of things.
With the berries, not the mushrooms.
With the berries, yeah. The mushrooms you definitely want to cook.
You don't want to make jam with mushrooms. That would be interesting, mushroom jam.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I just want to overview for our viewers out there. So you sort of do the trifecta of foraging. Foraging on land and foraging in the water, foraging berries. You know, so you're kind of all over the place with foraging.
Yeah.
But in our waters, we've talked about you can find salmon, halibut, lean cod, what else? Rockfish,
Yeah.
crab and shrimp.
Yep.
And those are also, there's native species within those, like
That's
spot
just the
prawns
fish. I mean, you
and,
have all kinds of, sea asparagus that grows. You
gooey
have,
duck,
other edible plants as well.
sea cucumber. Right, you wouldn't even talk about plants. I think that's a whole nother session is talking about
I mean,
edible
Southeast
plants.
Alaska has a lot available to you to eat and forage.
And we have a sea asparagus place too, don't we? We can't tell them. You maybe don't remember.
I remember.
So we do that. That's the water, and then on land you do mushrooms and berries, and there are
Mushrooms and
various types of mushrooms and berries. So what are the takeaways for our viewers? Like top 3 takeaways that you want them to remember when they're mushroom hunting or foraging in general.
Sure. Just make sure you're being safe out there in the woods, of course. You know, safety is always first. And then second, along with safety, is make sure that you are educated on what you're picking. There are certain things you don't want to ingest. So make sure you consult either someone who has more knowledge than you or your local expert on the matter. And then secondly, just have fun while you're doing it and enjoy Southeast Alaska and what it has to provide for you, because there's a lot out there that just the natural world can provide for you and your health.
And so just to tie this into mental health, this can be a great way to feed yourself, fuel your body, self-care, intention setting, purpose-driven. And the idea of practice is a form of being mindful and present in regards to you're doing this for the last 6 years, and so now it's become part of your self-care and part of your routine. So I always tell my clients, schedule self-care on your calendar. I know that sounds funny, we're all really busy, but you schedule this in your calendar essentially, and you do it almost daily. So it shows you how practice can really enhance your presence and your mindfulness. So thank you, Jake, for joining us today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We just really enjoyed going over those golden chanterelles with you. Those are the favorite one of our family, at least. And again, make sure you have your mushroom guide and a mushroom expert with you. And happy foraging, Ketchikan, and be well.